Hey guys, geez folks, you're back with another banger video, and in today's video I'm going to be reacting to types of werewolves too, so make sure you like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to give this video 20 likes, and without further ado, let's get right into it.
Werewolves. The reports and stories that go with them have been around for centuries, but don't forget, even if you wandered across a werewolf or some sort of a suspicious, scary encounter, it wasn't that long ago when you weren't able to whip out your cell phone for a picture or a video or even a blurry potato version. Even before then, those that did carry little small cameras that were looking for scary creatures, especially when there's a full moon, they were probably never seen again. And their old camera is laying buried on a forest floor, never to be found, containing the pictures of their attack, or at least their disappearance. Also, in more public places, CCTV was not a thing a few years back, so visual proof was scarce, whether it was in a forest or in more public places like a town or city. However, there is no shortage of reports and stories of sightings over the years to keep people looking over their shoulders in their local area where werewolf sightings have taken place. Not all people who have seen a werewolf have encountered problems. Some are sightings where the werewolf may have been lurking and moved on. Here are some reports that have been gathered in one place that contain some of the sightings that were reported from the 1930s to no later than 1993. So especially if it's a full moon, then make sure your doors are locked and your windows are shut. You never know what may be lurking. Let's take a look at 4 of the reported sightings. In southeast Wisconsin is the town of Jefferson. It is just outside of here, to the east of Highway 18, that holy man Mark Shackleman was driving in the year of 1936. It wasn't long before he saw a rather large, odd-looking figure digging around on one of them Indian hills. As he stopped to take a closer look, Mark could tell it was some large, bizarre-looking figure which was standing upright on its back legs digging. Clearly being out of the ordinary, and with it being dark, Mark was still able to see some of its face. He described it as having dog and ape-type features with pointy ears and a snout. It also had fingers that were almost human-like, although they were longer and overly hairy. This was to go with it having a stench of dead meat. He described it looking like a classic werewolf. Mark continued with his journey knowing he had to pass the same place the night after. And to his surprise, on passing the following evening, this creature was there again. He noticed that it was neo-human, meaning it has enhanced abilities which can include strength, as this thing turned and seen him. Mark, being the religious man he is, started to pray, but to his surprise, this crazy werewolf-looking creature started to back away the same time as Mark did, until it was out of sight. Maybe Mark's prayers worked, or he wasn't the creature's flavor. Either way, this thing was described as something satanic. It turned out that this was not to be the only sighting. Through the decades that followed, the same type of creature was spotted numerous times, with the first being that same year. Staying with Wisconsin and moving way forward to 1991, to a place near Delavan named Bray Road. In fact, it is only around 35 miles or so from the previous reported sighting in Jefferson. An unnamed woman was driving along Bray Road on a dark and misty evening when her car hit a bump and careened to the side of the road. This woman got out of her car to check due to the limited visibility and went to check what had happened. It was then she saw something big and hairy on 2 legs angrily making its way towards her. She immediately got back in the car, locked the doors, and sped away. This creature of the night leapt at her car and landed on her trunk. Although she had a lucky escape, as this unknown furry figure was not able to keep hold due to the moving vehicle and fell off of the trunk. It was reported that she returned later with a friend, only to see this shadow's form rising from the road. It is more likely this is what she had seen in the car mirror in the first place when driving away. If an unusually big, hairy, snarling, abnormal figure came towards you and then jumped out your truck and you were alone, would you go back with a friend the same night? Or would curiosity get the better of you and you wouldn't be able to resist potentially meeting a werewolf? As this woman's story became local news, it seems that this was not the only sighting of a similar creature on Bray Road. Only 3 years earlier, in 1989, a Lorraine and Drizzy had a run-in with a similar figure only half a mile away from the previous sighting. She had seen something ahead of her that looked like it was kneeling like a human or crouched like a werewolf would do at the side of the road. As she drove past this thing slowly and very closely, Lorraine described it as having yellow or gold type of eyes that glowed in a weird way. She continued that it had wolf-like features, although it was much bigger, also hairy, and having facial features that are long and snouty. She left the scene thinking it was some sort of freak of nature, only to look up the creature's description and come across a picture of a werewolf. Bray Road and the sightings were not finished there. A local farmer, Scotty Bray, who had his pasture in Bray Road, saw what he described as a strange-looking dog at first, although it was bigger than a German Shepherd-sized dog, scruffy gray-colored fur, pointed ears, a tail, and a strong chest. Farmer Bray followed it thinking it was some kind of cross wild dog or wolf, but he lost sight of it. He did come across footprints in the soil from the creature. It was then that he realized that this was no big dog, as the prints were huge. These were not just the only sightings, although all did happen between 1989 and 1992. A Texas woman by the name of Mrs. Gregg took 2 years before she could eventually tell her story of what she described as a shape-shifting man-wolf. It happened on a night in 1958. While her husband was away on a business trip, Mrs. Gregg was home alone that night. It was a warm night, and the darkness had set in. A thunderstorm was brewing, so Mrs. Gregg had moved her bed closer to the window to try to sleep, as she thought it would be cooler. As Mrs. Gregg had fallen asleep, it was not long before she was woken by a scratching sound from the window. This was coming from the window right next to her. In the darkness, a creature was lit up by the flashes of lightning. It was described as a wolf-like creature, and it was big, very big. Too big for a standard wolf. This creature was very hairy and had glaring eyes and snarling white teeth. She grabbed a nearby torch and pointed it at the creature, which then ran into the bushes. She waited and waited for this thing to come out of a bush. It was then that a tall man emerged from the bush that could have only been the furry creature that went in. He carried on walking away and disappeared and was never seen again in that area. Next, we're off to New Mexico with the reports of what could be a skinwalker. But first, let me explain what a skinwalker is. Skinwalkers come from the Navajo culture and language. In Navajo language, they are referred to as Yi Nadlushi. This means on all fours. Unlike your everyday person transforming under a full moon, it is said that skinwalkers are related to witches of the nastier type that can shapeshift into animalistic type creatures of the super nasty kind, often resembling a terrifying super werewolf. This information was said to come from a member of the Navajo culture in 1936. In Fort Gallup, New Mexico, a group of young adults reported that they had come across a potential werewolf in 1970 near Whitewater. This was not only strange just because it looked weird and was around 5 to 7 feet tall, it was also strange as it was keeping up with the vehicle that was traveling 45 miles per hour. And this certainly was no cheetah, which made some become nervous upon realizing this was no joke. It was then that all the windows were wound up and the doors were locked. The car started to speed up to approximately 60 miles per hour. The group were having to slow down though, as there was twists and turns on the road. One of them had a gun, put the window down, and shot this beast as it was still keeping up, possibly even advancing. The shot was said to have hit, but it didn't show any blood, but did slow right down. They continued and didn't go back. Due to the pace and looks of this creature, it was described to be a skinwalker as it accurately matched the description as said earlier from a Navajo named Hahango in 1936. Reported sightings spreading over decades indicate that werewolves have been seen over time in everyday people's lives, and that's presuming the reports are exact and correct. If they are, then it shows us there's a lot more about werewolves away from mythology, folklore, popular culture, and humans ripping off their clothes at the sight of the full moon and turning towards the savage ways of a crazy werewolf.
So that's going to be it for this video. Until next time, peace.